Well, you may have seen all of those ads about how to boost your immune system. Especially during COVID time, we saw a lot of them. But even now, it's like, take this, take that. Today, I want to talk and I want to ask this question. Is it possible to develop an immunity to porn's pull? At least in the best versions of ourselves. And today on Pastors on Porn, I want to share 2 words with you that I have been mulling over. I have been thinking over every day. I have developed a bit of a Vern liturgy around my daily walks where I think about these words, I recite these words, and here are the 2 words: desire and delight. I think in those 2 words, there is an incredible power that is available to us when we can appropriate the best meanings of those 2 words. And I want to use as a bit of my proof text the following verse, which combines those 2 words, which you, of course, might have already thought of, and that is from King David's Psalm 37, verse 4. Delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And I want to set out a bit of a pattern here where I think our desires tend to follow or are formed by what we delight in. So it's not just delight and you'll get whatever you want, but the very process of choosing our delight actually forms and transforms our desires. And so I want to just walk through 3 or 4 areas where I have really been working and trying to grow in my delight quotient. The first one is the idea of delight in the Lord. What does it mean to delight in the Lord? And the easiest place for me to start is this. I can delight in the Lord because it is rooted in his delight for me. Way back in the Old Testament, you see God's desire was always to delight in his children. For example, back in Deuteronomy 30, the passage says this: the Lord your God will then make you successful in everything you do. He will give you many children and numerous livestock, and he will cause your fields to produce abundant harvest. So you have all of this blessing language. For the Lord will again delight in being good to you as he was to your ancestors. So what you see is this bias, this desire for God to delight in us, to delight in his children. One of my favorite verses, which so ties in with my recovery and the way that he has rescued me, is found in 2 Samuel 22, verses 20, that says this: he led me to a place of safety. He rescued me because he delights in me. So there's everything in my recovery, all of this struggle I've had in my life, any good thing I've experienced in these last number of years of freedom and living in that, God's rescuing of me has all been rooted in his delight of me, his delight in me. You see, when we delight in the Lord and experience his delight, our desires are transformed. Why is that? Because we want to please the one who delights in us. Delight in the Lord. That's the first area. And again, you could go so much farther in that. What does it mean for you to delight in the Lord? Why and what is the basis? And how can you grow in your delight in the Lord? Those are some things that I'd love you to think about. Even send me an email. bandofbrothers.care at gmail.com. I'd love to hear some of your answers on that. Here's a related area of delight, which I think follows the delight in the Lord. and that is to delight in the Lord's way, to delight in the Lord's path for us. Of course, the enemy in our lives tells us choosing God's way is to choose second best, to give up fear of missing out on some good thing that we could have if we just did our own thing. Of course, we've tried that, and where did that take us? It just led us, into the swamp. And the idea of let's take the longest chapter in the entire Bible, which is, of course, Psalms 119. That entire chapter, 100 plus verses, could all be summed up in this: delight in the Lord's way, the Lord's commands, the Lord's pathway. One of the pictures that has, word pictures, which has meant a lot to me is, just work with me here. Take an idea of a swamp. And it's got gumbo, it's like molasses, it's sticky. To step into that swamp would hold on to you. It would grab your feet. You would sink in that swamp. And, you would be stuck. And so I pictured this dark, murky, molasses type swamp in front of me. But then I see this wonderful paved pathway directly through the swamp. And I can walk on it, I can skip on it, I can bike on it. It's like 10 feet wide, and there's probably flowers growing on the side, just to get flowery here. But it is this delightful path. And everything, I can, as long as I stay on that path, I can do cartwheels. I can, like that podcast I did, Wide Open Spaces, I can experience tremendous freedom. But if I step off that path, I immediately find my feet stuck. I start sinking. And so for me, one of my favorite verses, which sums up this idea of delight in the Lord's path, is Psalm 119. I think it's 32. I run in the path of your commands, for you have set my heart free. Can you see that picture? I run in the path of your commands, for you have set my heart free. So it begins with delight in the Lord, which then begins to shape our desires. It then grows to being delight in the Lord's way, the Lord's path. Now let's go on. How else can delight transform our desires? The next one I want to talk about is delight in your wife. Sometimes we've been married 38 years now. And when my wife says, I love you, I say, I love you back. Or I say, I love you. And she says, I love you back. Sometimes you could tell the great impact that those words have. Occasionally I kick it up a notch and I say to her, Susan, I really like you. Or she says to me, I really like you. And that actually at this point in our marriage actually feels more powerful. You actually like me having been together 40 years. You still like me. That's amazing. I can't even pretend that you only like me because you don't really know me. After 40 years, I don't think there's, much of me that you don't know, but you still like me. So love is one thing. Like for me is kicking it up a notch. But to make this go ballistic, I would say this to my wife. Babe, I delight in you. I delight in you. Boy, when I say that, she gets a smile on her face. It does amazing. Now she's also a love language words of affirmation girl, but I think any woman, if you told your wife, I delight in you and meant it, it would transform her. Talking about delight, Proverbs 5:18 and 19 says this: Let your wife, like, listen to the words of delight here. Let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. She is a loving deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast satisfy you always. May you always be captivated by her love. Right? Do you get the language there? It's the language of delight, captivated, in love. Right? I think when we choose to delight in our wife, it changes our desires. There's an old teaching that Doug Weiss used to say, the three most powerful words a woman wanted to hear in bed. And according to him, it would be, you satisfy me. That's the most powerful thing a woman could hear in bed. But I would partly change that and say, I delight in you. Now, that's 4 words, but I'm sure my wife wouldn't mind that extra word, right? I delight in you. So I think that has the ability to change and shape our desires, to increase our immunity to the pull of outside distractions and outside pulls for our vision and our attention. I'm going to add one more here. I think it's important to grow, and this will always be a bit of a challenge, but to grow in delight in your lot in life. Grow in delight with your kids. Kids can be a challenge. I heard one exasperated parent in the parking lot who was shopping with her kids, trying to get them in the car. And it was like, get in here, you butt nuggets. It was just like, you guys are rocking my shoe. You guys make my life miserable. How does that flourish a child? And I want to grow. I mean, when your kids are really young, sometimes, unless they have colic, it's easy to delight in your kids. One of the things that attachment theory talks about is when we look at a young infant in their eye and our eyes light up, there is something powerful in the eyes of delight that creates this bond between parent and child. I want to delight in my children who are in their 30s. I want to delight, here's a hard one, I want to delight in my 15-year-old. I don't have one, but I did. I want to delight in my teenager. I want to delight in all of the things that God has put in my life right now. And as I delight, I think what it can do is it can give me a shield against that nagging discontentment that we all struggle with. I wish my life was different. I wish I had this. I wish I had more of this. Why do I have to have this? I think delight also gives us an immunity against that nagging discontentment that can seem to always want to creep into our lives. And if there's anything that porn seeks to pull on, right, it's that discontentment. So I would encourage you this week to try out. Today's Monday. It's a beautiful day out. I'd encourage you for 5 days to try to grow in and rehearse and cultivate your delight. Your delight in the Lord. Your delight in the way of the Lord. Your delight in your wife. Your delight in your kids and the place He's put you in life. And as you do that, I really believe that your desires can be transformed. And then all of that, I would wrap that up in the bow tie of this: the Lord delights in you. To go back to that great verse, it says, He led me to a place of safety. He rescued me because He delights in me. At least that's the way I understand it. So Till next time, I'd love to hear from you again. I love reaching out to anyone who's struggling with porn, looking for a better life. Work with guys, regular guys, pastors, people in ministry who are looking for a safe place. Again, if there's any way that I can encourage you on your journey, maybe set up a Zoom call where we can share and talk a little bit more. Once again, my email is bandofbrothers.care, that's .care, @gmail.com. We'll see you next time.